I'm Keon.
And this is Inevitable, that podcast that's indistinguishable at 10,000 times magnification, because this week we watched Close Up.
Written by Tony Barwick.
Directed by Alan Perry.
And aired on December 16th, 1970.
Yeah, a much better episode after last week's outing, let's say.
Yeah, this is definitely my favorite one so far. I think I really enjoyed this episode.
Well, you know, that might be because it's written by Tony Barwick, who I was just checking now because I wanted to see what else he's written. And he writes, like 15 episodes of the 26 or something like that, or 14, I think. But so far, he's only written 3. He co-wrote Identified, and then he's written Exposed and A Question of Priorities, 2 pretty good episodes so far. A Question of Priorities, which is probably my favorite still, from the sounds of our pre-recording discussion, maybe not your favorite anymore, Keon.
No, this one is my favorite. And yeah, I have just in my random browsing of UFO stuff, I've seen Tony Barwick's name come up, and it's usually attached to like the idea that he is the best UFO writer.
Thankfully, he writes the next 3 episodes of the show, so maybe that's a good sign for us moving forward for the next 1 week before we go on hiatus.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, the Psycho Bombs is a very interestingly named episode. But I've even seen his name come up, like people saying, I don't like any episode of UFO that wasn't written by Tony Barwick type thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a little extreme. A little extreme.
It is.
Who doesn't love Kill Straker? Come on.
But speaking of different writers, we were just talking about this very briefly before we started recording. Like, I think UFO maybe suffers more than most shows from, like, different writers writing the characters differently. Because we were just talking before recording about how, like, most of the characters on UFO don't have a consistent personality, really. And that is on display prominently in this episode with our main character.
Yeah, I mean, we, in more specificity, exactly what we were saying off recording was that basically Freeman doesn't have a character anymore, and that Straker has absorbed some of Freeman's character for this episode, and also that Straker is just like, for every episode, is just the character that's, he just fills the void, basically. He just adapts to be the character needed for that episode.
Straker or Foster, you mean?
Straker.
Yeah.
Well, Foster also kind of just adapts to be whatever, like, whatever Straker needs, Foster is.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's kind of both of them, in a way. And it's just, you can tell, like, whatever the reason for it, whether it's just the myriad of different writers on the show, or whatever the case may be, maybe the characters never really had as defined a personality as we thought, but, like, whatever the case may be, they don't seem to really have a consistent personality or character between episodes, unfortunately.
Even in this episode, Foster tends to be not really there at all.
Yeah, Foster kind of took a back seat for this episode, which is fine, honestly.
I have a note that says I think Foster only says one line in this whole episode.
That's fine, though, because he is a prominent figure in most episodes.
Yeah.
And we got some
He's the everyman.
Yeah.
He's the Yates. He's Space Yates.
Well, hey, speaking of Yates, Benton was in this episode. And by Benton, I mean John Levine.
Yeah, you mean Space Benton.
Yeah.
Everything's cooler when you put the word space in front of it, UFO, boring. Space UFO, cool. Straker, boring. Space Straker, cool. I'm not even wrong. Name one thing that's not cooler when you put the word space in front of it.
You're right.
COVID? Space COVID.
Yeah, it does. It does sound cooler. I don't know, like space asphyxiation or something. I don't know.
That still sounds cooler.
Sounds more
defenestration, painful. Space defenestration. podcasting, space podcasting.
Yeah, is that why you... Okay, never mind. I was going to go into...
Is that why I research space? Yes, because everything's cooler in space. Well, anyway, the episode opens with Skydiver tracking something. Not a UFO for once, actually. This is like the first time I think the episode's opened with Skydiver, and Skydiver wasn't tracking a UFO. It was actually tracking a telescope.
Right. Oh man, I completely just blanked on what I was about to say.
Well, so Skydiver then surfaces, and did you get the impression that Skydiver all of a sudden is a lot smaller than you thought it was before? Because when it surfaced, and you like, there's a wide shot of like the entirety of Skydiver in one shot, and I was like, wow, it looks really small. Because if you look at the interceptor on the front, it looks like the one-seater interceptor on the front of Skydiver looks to be like a large, substantial portion of the length of Skydiver, and I was like,
Well, the interior of Skydiver, as we've seen, is basically really cramped.
Yeah, thanks, Subsmash.
Yeah. So, you know, yeah, as you were saying, they're not tracking a UFO, so the show continues to, like, just be about UFOs, like, on the periphery, right? Again, it's not
this one
really,
is more directly about UFOs later on.
It is, but it's like, in a way, it's not, too, where it's like, you know, last week we were kind of enthusiastic about the premise of the episode, you know, them kind of trying to get pictures of the alien planet and all this. And that is like, that's the goal in this episode, but it's like, it's not the main thing, as we're going to find out. Like, the big kicker at the end, like the kick in the teeth, is like...
The kick in the teeth?
Yeah, it's like peripherally related to that. It's more related to like, just smacking Straker down like a volleyball spike because he's getting, you know, too high and mighty for his own good type thing. But hey, speaking of enthusiasm and enthusiastic things, the soundtrack in this episode. I don't know if you noticed.
With the smooth jazz?
But like, yeah, it was, especially during the intro sequence, which is more of an intro sequence than we've gotten so far. I'm not talking about the typical one, but like intro sequence number 2 where we get the title drop, right? It is more, you know, bombastic, more enthusiastic, more... I almost wish that they did this every episode where you just kind of get like a little montage of, I don't know, files and folders with the credits rolling over them. It was nice. And then throughout the rest of the episode, the music often swells to I don't know, to something more than it has been.
It just felt very jazzy to me. I was like, jazz FO or something like that.
Do we know who did the UFO theme? I don't think we ever actually looked it up, to be honest.
I don't think we even know. Yeah, like on Wikipedia in the production... Oh, yeah, okay. Barry Gray was the composer for UFO, so... I mean, I have to assume he also composed the theme.
Right. There's a soundtrack import on Amazon, interestingly enough.
Barry Gray's Wikipedia page has a whole 3-paragraph long section, as long as his life and career section, that talks about the composing style. Gray's music is characterized by the use of brass and percussion sections. It made extensive use of leitmotifs, with each machine in Thunderbirds having its own theme. And on and on and on. Apparently, he also did the music for Dalek Invasion Earth 2150 AD, as well as Doctor Who and the Daleks.
That's
kind of wild.
Ridiculously small world.
He also did like every, Jerry Anderson production here, because he worked on Fireball, XL5, Stingray, Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons, Joe 90, Thunderbirds. UFO Space 1999.
Yeah, hey, consistent employment. Consistent employment.
That's true. If you can find employment like that, you know. I actually don't know what you would know from that. I don't know why I said, you know. Like, I don't know. I don't know what that means.
Well, so anyway, like we said, they're tracking a satellite.
Yeah, a satellite that's taking pictures of Earth.
Right, they pick it up. The images get sent eventually to Straker and Freeman, and they're looking at them, in Straker's office, and they go, my God, what quality. And it's just this black and white, fuzzy, blurry image. Not really, I'm exaggerating, but that's what it kind of looks like.
I love this episode because the sci-fi element of this episode is that they invented digital cameras. Like, this episode, I do love this episode because it is so perfectly... This episode could not have been written after, like, 1990 because once digital cameras in telescopes became the norm, the entire premise of this episode that Straker needs to convince people to pay him for his insane digital camera becomes completely moot the instant digital cameras become the norm. It's like this episode could only have been written in such a perfect slice of human history when cameras had been invented but were not yet digital.
Yeah, his plan to request like $1 trillion to take pictures of the alien planet.
It's $1 billion, thank you.
Okay, whatever.
And he couldn't even spare 50,000 for that one guy's. I don't even know why he wanted 50,000, but he did.
It was to like investigate the micro instead of the macro, or something. Well, so that's basically what happens next in the episode. Straker attends this. I don't know, like what you would call it, like a budget meeting, like a. Henderson is there.
The budget meeting of the International Astronomical Commission, which I don't know how we didn't question this before, but why is a military general in charge of the civilian organization? I don't know, why is General Henderson in charge of the International Astrophysical Commission or whatever they're called?
Yeah, it's a good question. I forgot he was a general. Yeah, it does say general here on the cast list. I completely forgot about that.
But anyway, before we get to the budget meeting, I just want to mention the guy who wants 50K is like, there are 53 items on the budget agenda tomorrow, and you're number 1, and I'm number 52. I just need 50K. Surely you can spare 50K. And Straker's like, no. I don't know why Straker's such a dick to this guy this whole episode.
Yeah, Straker meets this guy and some other guy who's not really that important in like they have, I guess, their own lab or something. It really seems like they've just been stuck in sort of a slightly large closet to just kind of do whatever they want. Almost as if it's too much hassle just even to fire these guys. They're just like, yeah, just stick them in a closet somewhere, let them play around.
Well, it turns out they're the lab that develops the images later, so joke's on Straker, I guess.
They attend the meeting, and this episode does something that I tend to like, just I guess in fiction overall, which is that like they tell you beat for beat what's going to happen for the rest of the episode, but somehow it's still interesting, They go in, they all sit around their round table. Henderson, brings the meeting he opens the meeting, brings it to a start. Straker gets up in front of everyone and explains the plan, which is that there's a book by Don DeLillo that you would actually like. This book, I think. It's called Libra. And it's about this.
Libra.
It's about the Kennedy assassination, but it's fiction. It's like sort of it's not alternate history, but it's like I don't even know what you would call it.
Oh, I've heard of this book.
Yeah.
The Wikipedia page is purple. The link is purple on my Google, so I've clearly looked it up before.
Well, I think I have it somewhere, so you can borrow it if you want. But it's basically about what's his face who killed Kennedy and kind of his life, but it's fictionalized. And it opens with a scene with these guys from the military and the government, but basically politicians, military figures, who they're talking about. They're conspiring to kill Kennedy, right? Because the book is about how this was an inside job and a conspiracy and all this. And so they're conspiring, and the first chapter ends with like some guy asking, and so we're gonna get this like rando from whatever to hit Kennedy, and the guy goes, no, he's gonna miss. And that's when you're like, oh, okay, this is for real. Like this is gonna be an interesting book. And I felt that way when I watched this scene from the episode as Straker's explaining, like, okay, we're going to get these digital cameras, we're going to take these pictures, they're going to be high fidelity, they're going to be high quality, they're going to be high whatever. And some guy's like, so what, but I don't get it. Why do you want to take digital images of the Earth? And he's like, not the Earth, my friend, the alien homeworld.
I also kind of just love the, like, Straker's explanation of, like, why this is different from a regular camera, just being like, this camera doesn't use light, it uses electrons. Like, okay, sure. Whatever you say, Straker. I also like how their vision of digital cameras was, like, measuring electrons and then sending it to like a tape reader on Earth that like reads it out from tape. The like least efficient digital camera of all time.
Well, the plan has some inefficiencies in it as well. I guess these are inefficiencies by necessity because they don't really know where the alien homeworld is. Like, and that's where you just kind of step back and like Straker's speech at the conference seems very convincing in the moment, but then you realize like they have no idea where the alien planet is. Like they're kind of skipping 20 steps with this like take pictures of the alien planet project, right? You just cut to like Straker, room full of smoke, ashtray stacked to the ceiling, like we have no idea where the planet is. 6 months later.
I know there's a 4-month time skip in this episode.
I know, I was going to say, like, I didn't remember exactly how long it was, but it had to have been a long time, like, yeah.
Yeah, it was 4 months.
That's actually really impressive that they got this thing together in 4 months. Just knowing, like, the bureaucratic flaming hoops they probably had to jump through to get this thing off the ground.
Well, actually, you know what? I take that back. I think there's 2 time skips in this. There's a time skip, like, building the rocket, and then there's a time skip after they launch it, waiting for the rocket to, like, follow the UFO back to the alien homeland. And that second one is definitely 4 months. I don't know how long the first one is.
10 years.
Exactly.
Well, anyway, I don't remember how we learned this, but I have it in my notes, so it must be true. Kelly didn't get his $50K.
Yep, unfortunate. Damn.
Meanwhile, Straker is over here picking his teeth with like the wads of cash they threw at him for this project.
$1 billion. He also mentions that they don't really clarify why this is the case, but it just is. So, you know, it just is, which is that they need to use like the NASA rocket to launch the probe. They can't launch it on their own lunar transports.
Right. They kind of, if I remember correctly, they explained some, reasoning behind this, but it's, whatever. And so, yeah, that was, I really like this, the launch sequence, actually. You get sort of a countdown and bad American accents and the whole package, really.
Yeah, we see a NASA rocket take off. Very cool, very cool. And then Straker's going to Moonbase. Basically, this mission is so top secret that they're cutting all communication with Moonbase. They're shutting it all down. Moonbase is going 0 dark 30 for a while.
And
So Straker has to be there in person to oversee the retrofit of the probe with the digital camera.
Right, and so he didn't actually explain what the deal is. So what they plan to do to find the alien homeworld, it's really all they can do, I guess, is they are just going to wait until a UFO attacks, and they're going to outfit a satellite with the camera, which is what's about to happen. Sorry, my voice kind of cracked there, as it does every 10 seconds. But, because I don't speak out loud anymore, except, ever. Like, I only do, like, once a week, and it's to record this. But anyway, and what is the rest of the plan? So they're going to, I guess, just drive off the UFO and then follow it back. I don't remember, like, exactly how they plan to get the camera to the alien planet.
Well, the probe, they've modified the probe to basically track the UFO, but so the probe is all automated, but they need to bring the UFO, like, within the orbit of
right
the camera, the telescope, so that the probe can track the UFO. So they basically just drive it off so that it picks up the probe essentially and then flies home. Yeah, they don't really know that the UFO's flying home. It could just fly to a random planet, I suppose.
Yeah, it's true, but it honestly doesn't really matter given the ending of the episode.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
It is kind of a dumb plan, I guess, because it's like, have we seen any UFO so far, like, leave? They all, like, either...
Yeah, we did. We did in, hang on. I have to remember which episode this was. I think it was actually in A Question of Priorities, because the first UFO attempting to destroy the second one leaves and then comes back at the end of the episode. And then just 360 no-scopes the alien from space. But, like, before that happens, it leaves, because it was chasing the first UFO in. And then when the first UFO enters the atmosphere, it leaves completely.
Yeah, I barely remember that. And that just goes to show you how almost inconsequential the UFO attacks are to this show. Or just how in the background they are, right? They're not the main thing. And that's true of this episode very much. And, like, that's kind of what I was trying to get at before. I don't know how well I communicated it. But, like, the premise of this episode, and that's like, I think something UFO does really well, to keep you interested and entertained, or to just, I don't know, say something more than just be a story about, humans versus aliens go, is like, there's always something more than the UFO attack, right? And it's like this episode, they're trying to get pictures of the alien planet, but, like, the end of the episode is like, it's something other than that. There's more thematic resonance than just, like, them trying to succeed at this goal, which they utterly fail at in the most hilarious way possible. But we'll get there. At this point in the episode, I think we get sort of an almost like 2001 Space Odyssey, like, type deal, where it's like they have this very and this is what I mean, too, with, like, the music being more prominent in this episode, is, like, there's this sort of very soothing sequence. They're doing a spacewalk. They're attaching the camera to the satellite.
Which even that is, like, the music is very 2001 A Space Odyssey,
right.
Because, for anyone in the audience who hasn't watched 2001, like, all the music in that is just, like, classical, orchestral, and band pieces.
Yeah, I haven't watched it, by the way. I've only seen clips.
This was actually, like, the only boring part of the episode to me. It was cool for the first, like, 2 minutes, and then it, like, just dragged on for, like, 5 minutes of just this guy floating in space doing something.
That's why it was good.
What?
That's why it was good.
Well, you would be wrong.
It was Foster, by the way. It was Foster and 2 other guys.
Damn, so that's what Foster was doing this whole episode.
Yep. I sincerely thought that like one of these guys who was helping them load the camera on was going to be like working for Kelly, and that Kelly, you thought this too, so we can kind of go into this. That, like, Kelly probably had a grudge against Straker in the entire this entire ordeal. Not really an ordeal, but this entire situation for being denied his $50K. And I sincerely thought that one of these guys was just going to like pull out a rocket launcher and just blow the entire thing up.
Well, I really thought that Kelly was going to like sabotage the telescope, like, because he was upset he didn't get his 50K. Like, genuinely thought he was going to commit some sabotage here.
I did as well. The episode really seemed to be hyping that up. But in a way he did by not saying anything, you know. But no.
Yeah, but we can give him a pass for that, I guess.
Yes, nobody really seemed to ask.
Even at the end of the episode, like, at the end of the episode, Kelly's, like, smug reaction to this entire thing does nothing to, like, dissuade you from believing the theory that he might have sabotaged the telescope.
Maybe. It doesn't really seem like there was any sabotage at play, though. You know what I mean?
Maybe. It just seemed to me very convenient, the way that the telescope like broke, happening to be like it mostly worked.
Yeah, it worked. It just didn't fulfill the needs of what they needed it to do in the greatest capacity that it could have.
Yeah, it worked. It just didn't perform its job. We should also mention before all this happened that the instant Straker comes onto Moonbase, Lieutenant Gay Ellis gives him a tentative plan for the astronauts to work on the telescope, and he goes, "Oh, this is great." And then he reads it a little bit, and he goes, "Well, you know, we'll need to read over it together." And then she like angrily storms out, saying, "Well, I did say it was only a tentative plan."
Yeah, really unfortunate name there. Really unfortunate name.
Well, you know.
No, I don't. What do I know?
It was a name. It was an actual name. It's not like...
Yeah, and it was an unfortunate one.
Okay, more unfortunate now because of the evolution of language, but... Yeah.
I mean, back in the 60s and early 70s, it just meant happy, which it still does.
Yeah.
It still does.
Okay, it still does in theory.
But still, imagine being named Happy, you know? Just the modern equivalent. Even that is unfortunate. Yeah, so setting up probably the most awkward scene in UFO here. Just, we'll get there, though.
It's just bizarre because, like, they had already set up a pseudo-romance between Straker and Nina Barry, and if they had just used Nina in this entire scene, it would have been a really satisfying continuation of what's already been set up, you know, something that these shows are not known for. But unfortunately, this episode was produced 4 episodes before Subsmash was.
Yeah, it still would have been awkward. Maybe just a little less awkward.
I think maybe it wouldn't have been awkward at all because it would have been a romance that had been alluded to / set up before. And it wouldn't have been something dumped into this episode, probably never to be picked up again.
Well, all right, so what happens next? So they load the thing on. They get everything good to go. And then, yeah, like you mentioned before, there's a time skip. And then a UFO attacks.
And there's a tense scene where they're trying to drive it off out into the outer orbit.
Mm-hmm.
And whether or not, you know, they're trying to do it without blowing up the orbit, the UFO, excuse me.
Eventually it works. They kind of have a tough time of it, but it works. They get the satellite on the UFO's tail. And they're like, all right, now we wait.
Yeah, now we just sit here and wait for 4 months while it travels to the planet. While it's traveling to the planet, Straker decides to smooth things over with Lieutenant Gay. And asks if she wants to get some coffee with him in the eating room, the eatery room. And this is the moment where I went, wait, who the hell designed this? Because both of them have to duck to get into the room. And I'm like, why is the doorway so low?
Yeah, I mean, look, designed by Sylvia Anderson, right? Well, I don't actually know if she designed the sets, but she did design the costumes, including the also incredibly strange and awkward costume that Lieutenant Gay is wearing. The skirt, it's like, it's so short. It's like the shortest it could possibly be and still exist as a skirt.
Well, I think it's the same skirt we saw in the first episode when we saw those lascivious shots of the woman changing.
Yeah, I think
it's the same off-duty skirt.
I think so too. This might even be the same character. I don't think Gay Ellis was really a major character in previous episodes. I do seem to remember her being there, but maybe just kind of as a background character, or maybe has 1 or 2 lines type deal. But yeah. Yeah, it's incredibly short, and yeah, it's so odd to me, the Moonbase costumes. The makeup as well, I think this episode does it even more prominently than they usually do, which is that it's most prominent on Ellis, which is her makeup is sort of very bright and vibrant. But again, same deal on Straker. You can very visibly see his dark eyeshadow around his eyes. I don't know if you noticed, but it's very heavy.
Yeah, it's especially noticeable when Lieutenant Ellis comes down to Earth and has no makeup and no purple wig, and you're like, wow, that looks like a completely different person.
Yeah, I did not realize that was the same character for most of that scene.
Yeah, I didn't realize it until Straker said, thank you, Lieutenant Ellis. And I'm like, oh my god, that's her?
I don't know if we mentioned this, but I did read within the last week that the reason why the Moonbase uniforms have the purple wig is that I guess Sylvia Anderson was just like, man, what if in the future, governmental, organizational, whatever uniforms had wigs.
Yeah, bringing back the Edwardian era. In fact, don't the House of Lords still have to wear wigs in the UK? I'm going to Google it. Do the House of Lords have to wear wigs?
If they do, that has to be the worst deal, for being a politician, on modern Earth.
Wow. Here. Coronavirus ends 300-year tradition in the House of Lords of officials wearing wigs.
Dang.
Parliament had to hire 6 more clerks during COVID to help elderly peers socially distance, and the authorities were unwilling to buy the temporary staff costly headpieces.
So that's why they did away with them, as a whole?
Yeah, that has to be the dumbest reason to get...
I'm just surprised they persisted up until 2020/2019.
Okay, based on this article, it sounds like the actual lords still have to wear wigs, but all of the clerks no longer have to wear wigs.
Are the I'm gonna Google it here. House of Lords. Wait, are they what I'm imagining? The 1700s style, down to your knees, white wigs?
No, not that long. Down to the shoulders, though.
Okay, down to the shoulders. That's what I was exaggerating. Oh my god, they are.
Yeah, they are. All right, well, I'll link this article in the show notes.
Jesus
Who says
Christ.
Inevitable's not an educational podcast?
Jesus Christ, UK. What are they thinking? I wouldn't be able to take anyone seriously giving a sort of address or like deciding any governmental matter, like wearing these wigs.
Can you imagine if, like, President Joe Biden had to come on TV every time he was on TV wearing one of those wigs?
I know, right? Like, if the presidential, like, fashion didn't evolve with the times and, like, just stayed as it was in the 1700s.
You know, honestly, I think the presidential debates would be a lot more entertaining if both candidates had to wear those wigs and like Edwardian dinner suits while arguing.
Yeah, probably. You have a point. Anyway, back to the episode.
Back to the wig episode at hand.
Straker gives Lieutenant Gay, Ellis, just this very awkward speech. He tells her how she's done a good job, a man's job, but she's done it well nonetheless.
Hell yeah, we love that casual sexism from your superiors.
Yeah.
That's what we love to see in Shadow.
Yeah, from the guy running the operation, you know, you can't go to anyone. Like when
I know, there's literally no one higher than him except maybe Colonel Henderson. And Colonel Henderson has been shown to be a little hands-off in dealing with Straker.
Right. He's not even part of Shadow, and he doesn't really seem to care about much. But yeah, Straker just drops this. There's no one for you to, like, talk to about this, if this happens.
Foster walks in right at the end of this conversation, and then Straker does himself no favors by turning to Foster and being like, "Don't judge a conversation based on the final 2 lines, Foster." And Foster just kind of shrugs.
He's like, "I wasn't going to, but since you bring it up."
Yeah, what are you covering up there, Straker? What are you hiding?
What else does he say? He says some other, he gives her some other backhanded compliments, but I forgot what they were.
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't write any of them down. It was just too awkward and cringeworthy.
Oh, it was like he continues telling her she did a good job in a less weird way, but then he caps it off with like, "And remember, you're a very beautiful woman."
Oh yeah. And you're just like, She kind of like quit Shadow because it's been implied before that they have no mechanism for firing people except to kill them. So
or erase their memories as they did with the people last week.
So they've indicated they have the memory erasing drug, but the only indication of what they do to people who leave Shadow is that they kill them. We've seen no indication that they use the mind erasing drug on them. Just saying.
Well, she doesn't really seem... Maybe she seems to mind, I don't know. But maybe if she knows what the comeuppance that is about to come to Straker. Not even for this, but just for, like... I don't know, his being in over his head with the plan. As we cut ahead...
Well, we skip ahead 4 months to when the pictures are coming in.
Mm-hmm. Kelly, the guy who requested the $50K, is in charge of developing them.
Not a great idea, but anyway. We see immediately actually when the pictures come through in the control room that they don't have the magnification information on them, because when the pictures came through earlier they said like range 490, magnification 50 times or whatever, like at the bottom of the image, but the ones that come through in the control room, so this is a nice attention to detail actually, the ones that come through in the control room don't have those printed on them already, so it's not a surprise when when Kelly reveals that without that information they can't do anything.
Yeah, well, it's still a surprise because you're probably not paying attention, right? It's like,
yeah,
it's just
possibly.
It's just one of those things where it's like a nice I don't know, touch or something, or it's like if you're really paying attention you will see what's coming. I wasn't, so I didn't.
Come on, Keon, you said you liked this episode.
I know,
SMH,
but that didn't,
fake fan.
Yeah, that doesn't mean I was paying attention to that level, on that level of detail.
SMH.
So Straker goes into Kelly's lab or office or whatever the hell this is. They look at the images. Straker again goes, "My God, look at the detail." Kelly tells him not to get enthused too quickly, because there are problems with these images. Problems of scale.
Yeah, because they don't know the scale of the images.
Right, Kelly kind of explains this in a roundabout, haha, told you so manner, where he shows Stryker a series of images, and he sort of asks him to tell him what they are. And they sort of just look like formations on the alien planet, like mountains, basins, rivers, whatever.
Yeah, he shows him an image and he goes, my God, look at the detail on those hills. And the guy's like, you think those are hills? What if we check this image? He's like, my God, look at the curvature of the planet. And he's like, you think that's the curvature of the planet? Let's zoom out a little more. And he's like, my God, look at those valleys. And he's like, yeah, that's Lieutenant Ellis's leg.
Yeah. Good thing for those ridiculously short skirt uniforms, right? They wouldn't have been able to pull this off. If the uniforms weren't designed in that way. I think she actually wasn't wearing the uniform in this scene, if I remember correctly. She definitely was not wearing the wig.
No, but she was wearing an equally short skirt.
Right.
That she's like hiked up so that you can see a lot.
Yeah. She's actually right behind the wall. There's a partition and she's right behind it.
This is the most hilarious plot twist in the whole episode, is you think he's viewing images, but actually it's a live video feed of just the other side of the wall.
Yeah, it's basically just a little window with a camera to zoom in. So Kelly's point here is that when you don't know the magnification, as they don't from the telescope, it either was it not designed to tell them, or did it just fail?
It failed.
Yeah. So
this is why I'm saying there's nothing that indicates he didn't just sabotage this, because
right.
Stryker comes in and he goes the images are great, but unfortunately there was a fault. And Stryker goes, what? And he goes, the images transmitted perfectly, but it didn't transmit the magnification information.
Right. And considering he was in charge of developing these things, getting them ready for Stryker to look at, there does actually, now that you mention it, seem to be some implication that he tampered with the results. Should have given...
Not looking good for Kelly.
Yeah, should have given him the $50K. This is what happens, when you don't...
I know, $50K is a fraction of a percent.
Yeah.
of $1 billion.
So, and it was actually related to the project as well, in a way, because he wanted the $50K to perform research or experiments on just basically the microscopic stuff. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, like we were saying, he tells Stryker that the images are basically completely useless. They don't really know what they're looking at when they don't know the level of magnification. And so what Stryker was looking at in the 3 images earlier really could have been anything.
Yep. The Stryker then leaves the room to go back to the video camera and starts zooming in, and I'm like, Stryker, what are you doing? Stryker? You're just zooming in on Lieutenant Ellis there. What are you doing, bud? But then he just sighs and he's like, dang. And then he has to explain to Colonel Henderson why this $1 billion project didn't get them anything.
Right. Henderson does not look amused.
Yeah, and he just says something like, tell Kelly he'll get his $50K. And that's the end of the episode. And my final note is, I don't know what that guy wanted the $50K for anyway.
He said it was in 1 or 2 passing lines.
He said it in one line that I completely missed and was too lazy to go back and listen to again.
He wanted to do experiments on microscopic stuff, and Shadow was like, "Nah, we need to go macro. We need to go alien planet. We need to go universal scale." And that was why it was such a blow against Stryker at the end, is because he has that whole, we kind of skipped over it, but he has that whole speech about how it's all just a matter of scale, right? there are tiny microscopic ecosystems and basically entire worlds living on single like square centimeters of the human body, or like just a single square millimeter of like anything. And so it's really, it's really doesn't, it's really not a, it doesn't make you like, it doesn't make your research any less worthwhile or like smaller in the sense of like less important to, when you want to focus on the microscopic instead of the macroscopic. Because there was this whole thing throughout the episode, an undertone of, oh, well, Kelly's research is not that important because he's looking at the micro, and we're looking at the big picture. We're defending Earth. We're looking at the alien planet and stuff like that. Which in a way is more important because they're being attacked, but, it's the thought, right, that counts or something, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I have much to add to that. I think you said everything. Said it perfectly there. I did enjoy this episode. I don't think I enjoyed it as much as you, but I enjoyed this episode. I mean, it kept it interesting the whole episode, which is, if you think about it, there's not a lot that actually goes on in this episode, but it was entertaining nonetheless for the whole episode, which is difficult to do. And even UFO is not great at doing this, as we saw literally last week with the square triangle. Yeah, I just thought it was fun, I guess.
Yeah, you're right. This is like a good example of like sort of a very simplistic and kind of threadbare story stretched out to 50 minutes, but like somehow it works,
I think it works because I think it works because throughout the entire episode you have this suspense of wanting to know if it's going to work or not, and you can contrast that to Square Triangle. The whole episode you're waiting for this moment where they're going to shoot the alien, right? Like, that's coming and you want to see it, and then that comes like so early relatively in the episode that the episode completely loses momentum. But you compare that to this, where like, you're all waiting you're waiting to see what the pictures of the alien planet are going to look like, and the whole episode like builds the suspense to what the images are going to look like. So you see the rocket take off, and then like they're doing the modifications on the rocket, and then they have to chase the UFO off so that the UFO takes the probe to the home planet. Like, it keeps building and building, and then you get the pictures at the end, and then it hits you like right at the end when you get the pictures that it's not what you expected.
Yeah.
Whereas in Square Triangle, with a similar kind of build, there's no build first off, and then like they kill the alien, and then you're like, well, what now?
Yeah, and the reveal at the end of this, I think, if I didn't telegraph it or say it as explicitly before, I think is probably one of the most successful moments that makes you go, oh, okay, well, this is like, this show, it's not really about the UFOs, right? It's about, I guess, just the character relationships, or I don't want to say the thematic stuff, but because, that's a sort of a diminishing of what that is, which I'm not going to explain because we could be here for 5 hours. But like, it's just one of those moments where it makes you go like, okay, this is real. There's more to this than just the aliens. And in fact, the aliens are not even the central thing, the UFOs themselves.
Well, we've said this before. The show is more about the effects the UFOs and the aliens have on humanity, right, rather than about humanity's fight against the aliens. In a way, it's more of a kind of meta concept or more of an abstract concept, let's say, than humans fighting aliens.
Right.
It's about what that fight and, the prolongedness and like the different techniques each side uses and how that affects like the human psyche and the human condition almost. And we always joke about Straker being like a bad alien, and that's why they keep trying to kill him. But like, the show is doing a lot of interesting things with studying how, how humans would react to being in these kind of like unknown, mystical almost situations, and how that, how they react to that.
Yeah.
Which, I guess my last kind of cap off to that is like, maybe that's why the best episodes of the show are the ones where explicitly the UFOs are only there to affect some change on the main characters, and then the plot of the episode is studying, how those characters react. I mean, a question of priorities was like Straker trying to decide if he should try capture an alien or save his son. Whereas compared to, I guess I keep going back to Square Triangle because it's the most recent, like, boring episode we've watched. Like, that whole episode is, like, predominantly an alien attack. Although, to an extent, there is, like, how does accidentally killing an alien affect a regular old person? But then they erase their mind, so it doesn't even matter.
Except for the guy that got killed, who didn't even know about any of this to begin with.
I know. That's a good point, actually. He dies, but, like, he never even found out about any of this.
Yeah, he probably didn't even know why he died. Like, both in the sense he didn't know about the UFOs, and he didn't know, presumably, about his wife having cheated on him.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just got the short end of, like, every possible stick.
Well, that's sad. Well, that's all I really had to say about this episode, actually. So I guess we can talk about some of those people in the episode getting affected by UFO attacks. Excuse me. I looked up Gabrielle Drake, who plays Lieutenant Gay Ellis. She's been in she's got 63 acting credits here as recently as 2012, and it seems like she's still alive. She was in Doctors, Coronation Street, Boy Meets Girl, Medics, Crossroads, just picking out some of the big ones. The Brothers, Omnibus, UFO, of course. What else? ITV Playhouse, Journey to the Unknown, and one episode of The Avengers and The Saint. And funnily enough, her like first picture in her little photo gallery here is a picture of her with Alexis Can O'Connor in a movie they starred in together. So just a weird little another connection there, I guess, to other actors we've looked up on this segment.
Truly is a small world. Speaking of small worlds, I looked up Neil Hallett, who has a very extensive career, has basically been in every major British show from the period that he was active in. IMDb gives me the piece of trivia here that he originally wanted to be a sheep farmer, which is interesting.
Okay.
But anyway, he was in, I should say, he died in 2004. The Buccaneers, Shadow Squad, that's interesting given UFO. Not related to UFO, well, presumably, I don't know for sure, but I would assume. The Moonraker, sort of similar to Straker, right? When you say it aloud. The Adventures of Ben Gunn. Yeah, ITV Play of the Week and all of these play shows or whatever these are. The Adventures of Robin Hood. This is the 1958 to 1961. I believe that is the one with Patrick Troughton, and I know we always say, like, is that the one with Patrick Troughton? I think that one is.
I think so, I don't know.
Emergency Ward 10, No Hiding Place, Dentist on the Job. That sounds really interesting.
Dentist on the Job.
The Vice, Crying Down the Lane, Ghost Squad, The Informer, The Avengers, The Saint, Out of the Unknown, Department S, The Newcomers, Counter-Strike, not the video game, so
CSGO.
1969. Yeah, it's a 1969 TV show. He was in Z Cars. What else here? Menace, Special Branch, The Protectors, Happy Ever After. He was in the New Avengers, Crown Court. Just, you can go on and on and on. Airline. He was in Doctor Who. He was in Time Lash. That's interesting, given there's an episode of UFO also entitled Time Lash. But yeah, he played Malin Renus in Time Lash, the guy who gets killed by Avon, a.k.a. Paul Darrow, a.k.a. the guy who usurped the title of Malin.
The usurper. All right, well, okay, that's enough of that. We have one short email this week from Steven, UFO Close-Up. This was episode 16 in the order I watched, unless I missed something that conflicts. This actually works pretty well, watching after Computer Affair. Guess I won't spoil why, but anyway, Straker's argument about magnification and distance really fell flat on its face before the example. In your episode custom titled Marital Meandering, Keon mentioned a South Park episode in which the internet stopped working because it got unplugged. If I remember correctly, it's actually that it needed to get unplugged and then plugged back in, basically the IT crowd thing of turning it off and then turning it on again. Cheers, Steven. It's not even just an IT crowd thing, that's actually a real, if your computer's having problems, that actually does clear them up a lot of the time, turning it off and on again, and I'm not going to go into the details as to why that works, because this is neither the time nor the place.
That's like every piece of technology, if it's not working, that's the first thing you do.
Turn it off and on again. Well, thanks, Steven, for reaching out.
Yeah, and excuse me for not remembering the plot of the South Park episode from 2008. Sorry.
Yeah, you're a fake fan, Keon. What the hell? You're off the podcast.
I'm not even a South Park fan.
You're off the podcast.
What the heck is 4D Special Agents? That sounds interesting, actually.
What?
Something that Neil Hallett was in. I didn't read it initially, but I'm staring at it right now.
4D Special Agents. Wow, I googled it and it looks a lot less interesting than the name would imply. I'm just going to say, some of these screen caps look really boring.
Yeah, it's like a kids show. Or at least it stars kids, seemingly.
Wow, there's a finite amount of results on the images page for this. That's quite rare.
There is on every Google image search. You usually just have to scroll for 10 minutes to get to it.
Yeah, but this one's just you scroll for 10 seconds and there it is. Yeah, well, whatever. All
right, well, anyway, we had some comments on social media for once, so thanks to everyone who sent one in. We're not going to read them. We're just going to move on. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. We are going to read them. So we didn't mention, I think, but this episode actually has John Levine in it. Maybe we did mention it. I can't remember. My short-term memory is just that bad at this point. But anyway, John Levine plays one of the Interceptor pilots in this episode. You get two little scenes with him in, one before they deploy and one with him sitting in the cockpit. So I questioned that on Twitter.com. I wrote, is that John Levine? And I put a screen cap on the episode. And then Fanderson, the Jerry Anderson fan community, responded, yes, also seen in the Interceptor cockpit. So thank you, person who's running the Fanderson account, for confirming that.
He's actually credited on the Wikipedia page as being uncredited, and then he's also credited on IMDb as being uncredited.
Mm-hmm. It is obviously him, though. You get the scene where they're in the little break room, and you're like, is that him? But then when you get him full on basically in the cockpit, and it's very blatantly
you feel like that has to be him.
Is this pre his appearances on Doctor Who? No, right? Or wait, maybe? I don't know.
Let's see. When did he first appear as? He first appeared as Benton in '68. So this is post his first appearance as Benton, but pre his final appearance as Benton.
Right.
It was in the Benton era.
That it was. So, yeah, speaking of putting space before everything.
Space Benton.
I put the same comment on Facebook, and Keith, friend of the podcast. Yeah,
50DW50.
Right, literally just commented Space Benton. So, yeah, it's Keith knows. Keith gets what's up.
bringing it full circle.
So Keith also commented on last week's episode, the square triangle, saying that it's strange to think most ITV stations treated it like a kids show. Yeah, and I guess that's in response to the discussion that we have almost every week at this point, in some capacity, of saying that UFO kind of straddles the line between the more kid-oriented things that Jerry Anderson produced before, and then something more adult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't just the TV, stations that treated it like that. A lot of other people were like, this is going to be a kid's show because Jerry Anderson, but plot twist. It's not. Yeah, and I think we didn't put it in these exact terms, but I think this actually helps clarify what we've meant, is that, like, parts of UFO feel incredibly kid-oriented. Like the machines, the heavy focus on, like, the skydiver and the interceptors, and, like, the design of the machines is, like, so obviously like toys.
Exactly.
Toys.
Yes, thank you for saying that. I can't believe I didn't, like, articulate that before, but, like, that is exactly what it is. It's like everything is designed to where you could buy a toy of it, but the show is not that.
Yeah.
So Boz also commented on this episode as well, and saying nice sinister ending over the end credits. And that is exactly that is the juxtaposition that I think we've been trying to say and failing, which is that, like, everything in the show is designed to be a toy, but this is an episode about a woman conspiring to kill her husband and succeeding, and the end is her going to his grave and just kind of sneering at it. UFO, everybody.
UFO, everybody. Everybody's favorite 70s sci-fi show. Well, thanks everybody for commenting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so before we end up the episode, we should probably explain what's coming up next. So we have one more episode of UFO before Inevitable takes a little hiatus. So basically, the plan here is we're going to do one more episode of Inevitable, and next Sunday, so that'd be Sunday the 25th, our episode is going to go out on Legend of the Sea Devils.
Right, on Trust Your Doctor. Yeah, so we should clarify.
Yeah, and then from then we're going to take, I don't know, maybe a 9-week, 2-month-ish hiatus from Inevitable just to do some Trust Your Doctor stuff. So we're going to, I think the plan is we're just going to basically start at the beginning of the Big Finish audio dramas from Audio Drama 1. Those are free on Spotify, the first 50. And I think the plan is just to do the first 10. We may have done one of those before, and if we have, we'll just skip it.
We've done a couple within that free, like, range that they have on there, so we'll have to figure out which ones those are. And
I don't think we did any that were in the first 10, so I think we're probably safe for this hiatus, for this little season of Trust Your Doctor, anyway, let's say.
To be perfectly honest, I would be okay with re-listening to the ones we already listened to, because hell if I remember them, to be honest.
But, I don't really remember them either. Yeah. So that's basically the plan. So it's going to be, Legend of the Sea Devils, and then, I don't know, somewhere between 8 and 10 weeks of audio dramas. We haven't decided whether we're going to do 10 weeks because it's a nice round number, or 2 months because it's a nice round number, but it'll be one of the two. And we'll obviously announce in advance when Inevitable is coming back. So we'll return with the second half of UFO. Conveniently, we take this hiatus basically right dead in the middle of UFO.
Yeah,
like basically halfway.
Unfortunately, it wasn't exactly, because it was episode 12 out of a 26-episode show, but we couldn't make it line up yet. Pretty close, though.
And so we're going to, we'll take a little hiatus, and then we'll return to finish off UFO and Inevitable. So that's the plan. One more episode of UFO, then a hiatus here on Inevitable. But we'll still be podcasting over on Trust Your Doctor. And if you would like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decadavevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on space telescopes. And JWST just finally is all set up almost, still calibrating, but A whole new era of digital telescopes is about to begin. You can find us on YouTube at Decade of Vegetable. You can find us anywhere you find the podcast at Inevitable, a classic sci-fi podcast. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook. Trust your doctor to like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast and follow us on Twitter. And next time, we're going to be watching The Psycho Bombs. The aliens transform 3 humans into walking bombs. But until then, the end.